Hi everyone, and this video is going to be super interesting. If you're someone who is building the Voiceflow agent for the first time for someone else, you really need to understand the process. And I'm not talking about just the process of building the Voiceflow agent on Voiceflow, but I'm talking about what goes behind the scenes. What are the things that you need to consider in the process? So that means, what do you do in the discovery steps? How do you plan out your build phases? How do you test it? How do you give your final product to the client so that they can use the chatbot properly? So I have everything planned out for you, and I'm going to show you step by step what is required when you're talking to a client, and understand the steps so that you make sure that when you're building these, you're building them with confidence. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing is we have discovery, then we have the building phase, the testing phase, and the launch phase. Now I'm going to start at discovery because that's the most important part. And when I say discovery, it's really simple about understanding what does the client want. And when you have to understand their requirements, it's super clear that most of the time they are really not sure what they're trying to build, right? They want something, they might have an idea about it, but most of the times they really need to be guided through. So that's why I've written understand their requirements, and the only way to do that is by asking them a lot of questions. Literally, you should have a question and answer thing with them on a call that, what does this look like? How does this chatbot help people? What are the options that you're trying to build into this? Why is this required for your business? XYZ. Ask them these questions so that you can understand what they're actually trying to build. And that also helps them understand what they are trying to build, because a lot of those times this is a very new thing, right? Building AI chatbots, AI agents is a very new thing. So you need to understand that and go with that mindset that you are going to help educate the client on how they're going to utilize this process. Okay, and then you should have like a complete template to understand what questions to ask, like whatever those questions are for. And they're pretty simple. I don't have a checklist as such, I just know them by heart by now, but very simply, like, what does this do? How does this help your business? What are you looking out as an outcome? How should a user feel, and everything else? I do like a 45-minute discovery call where we ask all these questions. I document all these questions and answers, and not whenever I'm also building something similar like this, I do like a huge call. I understand what they're really trying to build and put all of that together in a single place. And when you put all of these things together and then you understand, okay, you know what, these are the steps that need to take, both the people who are involved in both the parties are super happy. You are happy, your client is happy, because you are building something that they are really clear about and they don't want to change the scopes for that. Now, you need to have like a complete checklist of the questions that you need to ask. I'll just give you some examples, like, why are you building this product? What is the need for this? If you're building this, what is the goal of building this? How should the person who's interacting with the chatbot should feel like, right? Or do you want some other inputs that you need to go? Again, just have some questions that you understand about their business. You should be able to really ask them what is the need for this and how does a final product look for them in their mind. Because again, a lot of times I face this issue that you will get into a call and you will start understanding something. Well, I don't understand this clearly because again, we did not discuss this, or I'm not sure. And then you'll understand, like, where they are and how much do you need to educate them. Because again, remember that these are super new things. AI agents, AI chatbots are super new, and you need to handhold these people on understanding what they need to do, right? Again, so that's great. That's step number one, to understand discovery. And I would say if you spend a ton of time in discovery, you are doing yourself a favor. Like, I would say spend at least like 7 days with the person to understand, set up a couple of calls, understand what they are, document everything, and then send it back to them. Like, here is what we discussed, here is what I understand, and this is where we are going to go from there. Because if you do this step well, the rest of the steps just become 10 times more easier. I know you won't believe me right now if you're starting out, but I'm telling you, you need to follow these steps so you make sure that you are on the right path. Because you don't want to build something that nobody wants later, or they're not happy with it because they're like, well, you need to change this, or you need to do a lot of rework. So spend time in discovery. Let's come to the next step, which is actually the phase which is about building, which is actually going and building the chatbot. Okay, and let me just move myself. Okay, which is where you go ahead and build the chatbot. So very simply, there are 4 steps that you need to think about here. Now, the first one is probably one thing that I think experienced builders know, but someone who is starting out does not know. And that's conversational design, right? So very simply, when you're building the chatbot or when you're building the whole flow, you're not just doing like just a question and answer thing. You're building a whole flow on how does the conversation look like? What are the different triggers that you need to consider? So if someone asks for pricing information, does that take you to another workflow, or does that take to you another pricing page, right? Just an example. Or if someone is asking questions which require a human handoff, do you want to hand it off right now, or do you want to send an email automatically to the user and say that, we are going to contact you back in 24 48 hours? Whatever these things are, you need to really map that out, and that is what comes in conversational design. Okay, so the first step is go ahead and build the conversational steps, like literally build example conversations. Take something like Whimsical or a Miro or whichever diagram tool you want to use, and just step by step write this. Okay, question from a user, here is what the AI or like the chatbot should respond as, and that's how you map out 3 to 4 conversations, right? So you will go ahead, I'll just show you an example. So say, welcome to Google, and then let's say, like, you'll have another question, how can I help you? And then the user response will look something like, I need help setting up an email, right? Now you will do this for your most important conversations. Now every part of the conversation is important, but there are some main flows that you really need to think of, right? So I will do these kind of examples. So this is what the system will say, and this is what the user says, and then how will you respond to that? Because that helps you plan out your chat journey and just understand, okay, what you are going to build. And when I build these things, you are not only going to see, like, how the conversation looks like, but you're also going to send this to your client if they want it, and just help them understand, like, does this feel right? Because again, you have learned a lot from discovery, and then you're going to finally give them this information. So again, how will the input and output look like? Again, how does the message from the user looks like, and how does the output from your chatbot looks like, for example? Then you will have and talk to the people who are using it, right? Very specifically, if you can talk to users who are actually going to use this chatbot, if they're internal people or if they're customers that they know, please go ahead and do that. Because, like, give them the first early drafts, or even just talk to them before starting to build, like, what are the problems that you're facing? What do you want the chatbot to respond as? Is there something that we can do something? If that is a possibility, please go ahead and do that. A lot of times that is not there. That's why I mentioned that as the last step, but if you can, it really adds a lot of the value to the conversational design. So once you've done all of these things, where you have done the discovery, you have understood this, you have done the conversational design, the second part comes out as prompting. Now, if you've done your discovery right, okay, if you've done your discovery really right, prompting should be an easy thing, because in a prompt, we are just defining how the agent should act, right? And how it is going to act, how it is going to respond, how it is going to engage with the user, and all of those things. So if you're doing the discovery and the conversational design right, prompting becomes easier, because there you just have to define the persona of the agent. I always try to use persona prompts a lot when I'm setting up my agents, but you can use something else and utilize that and set up the prompts. Now, remember this, that whenever you are trying to create a voice of the agent, be very clear on who is the user. So if someone is like a user is someone from, like, again, a serious industry, which they don't like any kind of humor in their responses, then make sure that you don't do that. Make sure that you are inputting the effort, that it's not humorous, it has a professional tone, a polite tone, and just go for that. Next thing is that you need to understand the difference between two kinds of prompts. There is one thing which is system prompts, and then there are reply prompts. System prompts are prompts which are required to run during the voice flow. So for that means, like, you want to set a variable, or you want to change something, you want to set a value of something, that's system prompts. That means the user is never going to get impacted by whatever you do in the system prompt. They're never going to get a response from it. But second thing is the reply prompts. If your user is going to get a message out of this prompt, so for example, if I have a prompt written, I want you to reply as, like, I don't know, Warren Buffett, right? I want you to reply as Warren Buffett in a simple game of, like, role play or something. And if you want to do that, then you need to make sure that that prompt is very well structured. So system prompts can still be, like, very direct, very open, and you can, like, just get the response that you want. But if you're writing reply prompts which users are going to see the final messages from, you really need to make sure that you are doing an extremely good job at it. Okay, now once we have gone through prompting, once you have all of these things in place, you are pretty much, like, in a good space, that you have the idea of what you're going to prompt, how the voice of the agent looks like, and the only thing now left is to build the knowledge base. And again, when you're building a knowledge base, you need to make sure that you do this extremely well. Let me just show you an example. Okay, so this is my website. Again, it probably has extremely old data sources a lot of times, but one thing that I really want an exact response every time someone asks a question to my chatbot is that I want to make sure that if they're asking to book a link, they should always get the same link. There should not be anything else. And again, if you think that is already listed on your website, don't do that. If you're building a knowledge base, make sure that it is extremely robust, and always try to use just plain text. Literally, just text will work the best format. So a couple of examples that you need to understand to keep knowledge bases is docs. If you have just plain text files or word files that you can use, or you have FAQs from the website that you can convert into text, or they have internal FAQs. If you're building something for a client, you need to make sure that ask them these questions. They need to give you a lot of knowledge base, because that helps you understand and also get the best answers possible every time. When you are building the knowledge base, have a list of things that your customer can provide you, give them that list, and make sure that they can help you, like, again, if they have doubts, okay, how does this look like, and you have an example of how that will look like. And then again, obviously a website is a great place to start. Whenever you're prototyping, you can use someone's website, but if you're building something for someone, make sure that you have all the details in a single place. Okay, awesome. Then you come to APIs. Now this is one step that a lot of people just don't understand at all. You are probably going to use a couple of APIs in your Voiceflow agent, and when you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you've worked with these APIs before. If you have not worked with these APIs, please spend some time to understand the APIs before even going to Voiceflow. Just test these APIs out on Postman, understand them, read their documentation, and do that. Most people just skip this step and just say, like, well, we're just going to figure it out as it comes. Don't do that. Spend some time, because the point is, once you do that, you understand how these APIs work, and probably you can, like, just do a better job while building it. Okay, so again, if you do these 3-4 steps while building, which is like very simple enough: conversational design, prompting, knowledge base, etc., you are in a lot better position than anyone else. Because if you just do these steps, your agents are going to look so much more better than compared to anyone else. And that's what's super important while you are delivering value to someone. You do the right steps, you build the right things, and you do that again. And that's what also you're charging them for. So okay, let's come to the next step, which is testing and debugging. Okay, so let's say you've got the chatbot built, you have everything in place, you got the right discovery, they are super happy, like, okay, you are like, you are building this, but now you're going to test this stuff. One thing that most people do is they either don't test enough, or when they're testing, they don't know what they're testing for. So if you're just testing if the chatbot is running, that's a horrible way to test. You need to test, okay, what are you testing for? For example, if you were expecting a certain kind of a response, and that's where we come down to this conversational design. If you did the right design, your chatbot should respond in the exact manner your conversation design looks like. Because if it does not, then that means you have not done a great job at either prompting or connecting the right variables or putting it all together. So again, setting parameters is literally just about, okay, if I'm going to ask it a question about pricing, it should redirect me to another web page and not try to answer it themselves. If it does not do that, that means my test has failed. So again, test it in the process that you need to know what kind of response should come. So that's how you set parameters and test. Second, really test a lot yourself. Try to give it wrong examples, try to give it wrong answers, try to confuse the chatbot. And like from there, you can just go from step 1, step 2, step 3, and just keep iterating. Third, give use cases, right? Very simply, when I say give use cases, that means, like, give it examples of, like, things that can go wrong, right? For example, just think through it. If someone asks, like, there have been so many fiascos where one person just negotiated with the company's chatbot that give me a car for €1 and it just said yes. So think about those things. Think about how a user might try to abuse your chatbot, how they might try to, like, just tell it, like, unfollow all your instructions, or they might be trying to get a complex answer and your chatbot just does not do anything more than simple answers. So again, think about these use cases and do that. And then whenever you are sending this to test with the customer, you are sending this to them, make sure that you ask what did not work. For example, if they come back and say, it's not looking good, it's not great, that's a horrible reply. Because if they're just going to give you that, you don't know where did you fail, where the chatbot is failing, where the AI is not responding properly. So you need examples. The best thing with Voiceflow is you can always see the conversations that have happened, right? So if you come here and you see, click on transcript, you can see all the conversations that have happened with this. And if you can see that, it really helps you out a lot. You can see the debugging, you can see what went wrong, you can see what went right, and all of those things. And when you're doing this, you need to understand, okay, maybe this was the response that they were expecting and this did not get. Don't guess, just ask when you are sending for test. If you find something that you did not like, please send me a screenshot of that chart, and then you can go ahead and see what went wrong. Again, it will take a couple of steps from them. If they don't want to do that, just get them on a call and understand what went wrong and then do that. Don't try to assume. Please, literally just do proper testing, because it's the most important part of the process. And one thing I would like to say, this testing and debugging, and these are not steps that you do one after another. So for example, if I just take a connector, this is not like this. It's not just going to end there. You build and then you test. No, it's going to be like this, more or less. It's like a complete loop. Okay, so you're going to build and then you're going to test and you are going to again build, you are going to test, and then you are going to keep continuing until you are happy with it. So whenever you're building, if you take care of the initial build phase and you do the right steps, the other parts are going to be easy. But that does not mean that the build phase ends there. So again, think of these in phases: discovery, building, and then testing and debugging. And then this thing, final thing, is going to keep running across. Okay, awesome. If you're done with all these steps, then final step is launching this. Now, if you're launching for the first time, please pay attention to this. Okay, so first step is whatever launcher you are using. So test if the launcher is working. So if you're going to integrate it using this web chart, you are going to utilize this. So if you're going to use this, make sure that you test it before launching it. So you test on a website, test on a test website that you have on the client's website, and make sure that you just copy and paste that code and test it on their beta website before launching it to the whole world. Because if it does not work well, you should know that beforehand. Next is test on multiple browsers. Okay, so for example, I know Safari is super notorious in running your CSS files. If you've done some kind of custom code, if you've done some changes, it will not render a lot of elements. So make sure that when you're testing, you test on multiple browsers. You test on mobile browsers, so test on an Android and iOS, test on Safari, Firefox, Opera, test on at least 3 browsers just to be safe. And again, just ensure one of them is Safari, because a lot of people still use Safari. I don't know why. Okay, finally, have a feedback option. And really, like in every bot that you are trying to build, and if your client is fine with it, have a feedback option. Let people give feedback at the end of the conversation. You can program it in a certain way that is ask questions at 5 to 7 questions or something, whatever that is for you, but have a feedback option. And whenever someone gives a feedback, understand it and improve it. Understand and improve it. Don't just have a feedback for the sake of having feedback. Really work on it, and you will see that your building skills will improve a lot. And probably then so sometime you will have to take less feedback, but again, you will always need feedback. Okay, so again, all these phases, just to zoom out and show you the content. So let me just do this: discovery, build, testing and debugging, and finally launching. And if you do these steps well, honestly, you are better space than a lot of people who are just going to build a chatbot and just sending it for testing and not doing all these steps. You're just in a better space to do this, because once you do these steps, you are in a much better place, and also you're building the right thing. I don't know if you understand this, but very simply, if you do, great for you. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to learn more, please follow me, and I have a whole Voiceflow playlist that you can check out. So please like, share, and subscribe, and I will love to see you guys in the next one.